Hi, welcome to this video. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the 2021 film Dune and my thoughts on it. Additionally, I also want to touch upon some conversations or misconceptions that people have been having regarding the story itself based on Frank Herbert's original book released in 1965. So in the beginning of this week, I actually went out with my friends to watch the movie Dune, like a lot of people have been. And prior to that, I have been doing a lot of research in terms of, how the director came about the movie, what he wanted to show. And additionally, I also watched some interviews where I get some insights from the actors and what they think the message of the movie was. And then I obviously had a very in-depth conversation with my friend who actually inspired me to make this video, who gave me a very in-depth summary and in-depth view of what Frank Herbert was trying to say through all the books. Not all the books, because really the ones that she touched upon was book 1, 2, and 3, but I'm going to be focusing on book 1. After my friend has told me everything and give me an in-depth view and summary of the first book, I went online after watching the movie to do some more research and to see what other people had to say, especially about some of the critiques that the book itself have received, and also some of the stories and the messages that I feel like the book also was trying to put out there. So I am going to be linking all the sources that I have used. A lot of the articles did help me, shape my viewpoint and, maybe confirm some of my point of views or thoughts that I had. Also gave a lot of perspective from Herbert himself. And before I start the video, I do want to say that there will be spoilers when I'm summarizing the story. The spoilers for only the movie, because the movie really only did only the first half, or maybe 1/3 of the book and the story itself. That's why I'm just saying there will be spoilers. However, I think everybody should get a gist of what the story or the book was about before they watch Dune, or maybe watch Dune for the second time, so that they have a better understanding of what the story is actually about, what are they actually talking about. For example, if my friend hadn't given me all of the gist of Dune, I wouldn't have understood a lot of the things that was going on in the film. In my opinion, I think the film did kind of target the book fans, and they, put it all together in terms of how the book fans would enjoy it. And because there's so much information, they can't really go in depth. So I do think that the target was more for the book readers than new time watchers. That's why I also think a lot of people think it was confusing and boring. And in fact, it wasn't confusing or boring. It was just not very shallow and surface level. It was just very dramatic. And they really, really, went in with their acting and visuals. And it was really enjoyable, including the music. Hans Zimmer, you can't beat him. So in Dune, there are 5 main groups of people that I feel like we should keep in mind, at least for the first book. It is the House of Atreides, House of Harkonnen, and the overarching Imperium. Then we have the Bene Gesserits, and then we have the Fremens, who are from Arrakis. The House of Atreides is, where Paul is from, where his father, the Duke, is from, and there are one of the Imperium powers, one of the houses that have good military power. And not only that, the Emperor, who we're gonna get into, also fears that the House of Atreides is going to overthrow almost, because they're really good and influential on people, and they're the Duke is very likable, and people would listen to the Duke more than the Emperor per se. And then we have the House of Harkonnen, who are these ruthless, greedy folks that does not really care about anything else except for power. And the Emperor does favor House of Harkonnen more than House of Atreides, because they know that House of Harkonnen just only cares about power, just like the Emperor, whereas the Atreides, they want to be on people's good side. They'll compromise, which the Emperor does not want. So the Emperor, right, they're the main order, the universal ruler of all the houses. So I think there are so many, I don't know exactly how many houses there are, but there are way more houses. They're like little planets, and the Emperor is like the ruler, the governor of all of these houses, and they have to obey whatever they say. So after the emperor, we have the Bene Gesserit. So the Bene Gesserits are like the super powerful women-led religious political group. And they are shown to be moving in the shadows and ordering and controlling people from the shadows. They're not really out there. They don't have really like a military presence. They're more like they work with their heads, and they're like known as like the witches because they do possess some like mystical supernatural powers. You know, for example, like the voice. They're able to see visions from the past. And we know that Paul's mother is a Bene Gesserit, Jessica, Lady Jessica. And then Paul, we know, is a result of Lady Jessica and Duke Atreides. I don't know how else to put it. I don't know why I said a result of. He was procreated. He's just a child of Lady Jessica and Duke Atreides. And therefore, he is not full Bene Gesserit blood. He is half Bene Gesserit, which pissed the Mother Reverend, who's like the current leader of the Bene Gesserits, off, because they have this strict breeding system, because they're really big on, you know, keeping their bloods pure, keeping their generations very nice and clean and how they want, so that, you know, whatever their agenda is, which I'm gonna get into, is, you know, met. Lady Jessica is known to have been disrupted that little breeding system. In the movie, they do talk about it briefly. Not briefly, they do talk about it. So yeah, this breeding system will ensure that they get their ultimate messiah, who's supposed to be a daughter. However, because Lady Jessica, you know, fell in love with Paul's dad and conceived Paul, she kind of like disrupted their entire plan of having this messiah or bringing this messiah into the world. And, you know, Paul's capabilities and abilities are still kind of, you know, unknown to the Bene Gesserits, because again, he was a surprise. He was not supposed to happen. He was an accident on their end. And their agenda is basically to have this big messiah who they believe will lead humanity to like stability and greatness. And it has to be a Bene Gesserit, because they think, and they are kind of like these really powerful and cunning witches, and that's their whole agenda, and they don't care what they have to do, and they have a lot of influence on the emperor, and they will do whatever it takes to get their agendas across. Which brings us to the Fremens, the people of Arrakis, the planet where the spice is found. So the Fremens, as we know, that they are the oppressed group, the group that is mistreated, because their own land produces this really special resource called the spice. And among the Fremens, they believe in this prophecy where they will have a messiah or a Mahdi who will lead them to almost like freedom and power, which they currently do not have because they're being colonized. And the whole prophecy is actually, you know, not something that the Fremens actually, you know, believe. It's not from their own culture or traditions. It is actually a propaganda, basically, that the Bene Gesserits put into them so that they can ensure that whoever this messiah of them is can have power over these people who has access to this resource that is really useful, and is valuable to all of these powerful military-based houses and planets. So yeah, that's why they put in the propaganda. So these Fremens full-heartedly believe that they will have a Mahdi who will save them, and it's the work of the Bene Gesserits essentially. So that is very important to establish, because a lot of people, they might say like, oh, like, why are these people made to be these, you know, almost brain dead, brainwashed people following this white savior? It's unfortunate, because it's not them who believe it from their own heart, and instead they were told to believe it. You know, when you don't have rights in your own land and you get mistreated and oppressed on your own land, you know, you would be desperate to have someone just lead you out of this whole mess. It makes sense, and we should empathize with the Fremens instead of calling them dumb or whatever, because they're not. That's also another thing that we should establish about the Fremens, is they're known to have this desert power, which shows that they are super knowledgeable of their own lands. And it is really important to establish, because Herbert shows that these indigenous folks know their land the best. They're the ones who know how to navigate through this really deadly and oppressive and hostile desert, not these really powerful military houses. The Fremens are the ones who knows exactly what to do and how to survive, because essentially all of these tools and military stuff does not matter when they go into the desert, right? It won't keep them alive. What will keep them alive is all the knowledge that the Fremens have, because, again, this is their own land. They know how to survive. So they're not dumb, helpless people who does not know what to do. They're just unfortunate group of people that are just victims of imperialism. So now that we have established that, let's get into Paul Atreides and how he's supposed to be and who exactly he's supposed to be and how people are mistaking him to be, if that makes sense. So Paul Atreides, he's the son of the Duke, and then he becomes the Duke after his father is killed by the Harkonnens, and he is half Bene Gesserit, so he possesses some Bene Gesserit powers. And because of him, their whole Messiah breeding system thing has been disrupted. He was born a generation too early. Their Messiah was supposed to be actually born the generation after when Paul was born. Therefore, Paul's power and his ability to lead is very skeptical to the Bene Gesserit. But at the end, they believe that he does possess a lot of the signs that they think the Messiah does possess. And Paul at first is skeptic of it, and then later he figures out that, oh, all these Fremens, they think that I'm special. Okay, let me take advantage of this. He essentially just wants, I have said the word essentially so many times in this video, but hey, but he wants revenge. His entire planet, people from his planet has been destroyed. His father has been killed. And the only thing that's left of is him, his pregnant mother, and that's it. And he's powerless. He wants revenge. He wants to figure out what the hell to do. So what does he do to get his revenge? He sees that these Fremens are super infatuated by him. They are slowly believing that he is the Messiah, because of his Bene Gesserit superpowers that he possesses. So his senses, his superpowers, are even more powerful in Arrakis, because the spice kind of acts like a drug that helps him, see these visions more and more clearly, I guess. The Fremens believe that he is their Messiah because of a lot of these signs that he shows, and he takes advantage of that. He's like, oh, these people are willing to follow me and listen to me, so hey, let me build my own empire and seek revenge for my father. So to start off with, Herbert is showing that Paul is a flawed character. He is not a hero. He is an anti-hero. Therefore, Herbert was not trying to portray Paul as this white savior who's going to save the Fremens. Herbert showed Paul as this really flawed person who also is not different than any of the other houses who, have their own self-interest. Paul is not supposed to be a good person or a hero, and Herbert makes it clear. Therefore, a lot of people who are claiming that, oh, why are we watching another film where we have a white savior trying to save these oppressed minority brown folks? That's not the case. And I feel like the Herbert actually made great points through Paul. Herbert is essentially showing us how the colonizer takes over a land and exploits the indigenous people, and shows us the harm of imperialism and colonization. And no matter how much supernatural power one may believe they have, they'll never be able to be the leader for a land in a land that they're not from. Paul is not from Arrakis. He does not still possess the desert power that these people who were born in and is raised in Arrakis have. And it is shown because he leads these people to essentially doom. At the end, Paul ruins the entire civilization. He ruins Arrakis. He disrupts the ecosystem of Arrakis by introducing water and then sending these people and just overall exploiting them. And, again, that shows that Paul is not supposed to be a hero. Paul is supposed to just be our first-hand point of view of a colonizer. And, no matter how much a colonizer thinks that he has the superpower ability or any kind of birthright to be somewhere and lead some people, he'll never be able to do that. Because first of all, his reasoning's not pure. He is cynical, right? And then he's not from there. He's not indigenous to Arrakis. So he does not know, how the ecosystem works. He destroys it. So I think Herbert makes a great point, right, through that. And the reason I want to highlight that is because I just wish more people were having this conversation about, the settler colonialism, and, about the anti-imperialist message at the end and the importance of indigeneity within one's land. But, people are not having that. People are having all kinds of BS conversations regarding the movie, and I just wish they, emphasized or highlighted these messages that I feel like is not heard, because a lot of these indigenous folks or marginalized folks, when they do talk about these messages, it's like, oh, they're going off again. But then if you have this big blockbuster movie, right, that gives them a platform and, that will make everybody talk about it. Now, on one hand, we have people talking about all the A-list celebrities. Oh, they're hot, this, that. Oh my gosh, can't wait to see them. Da, 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 da. And on one hand, we have people completely hating on it. People are like, oh, what is this BS movie? Completely, misled, completely have a misconception of the message or the theme of the movie. And the funny part is that the movie didn't even get into the actual story. Someone on TikTok said it was 2.5 hours of a trailer for the second movie, and I agree. It was basically just like a setting up. Someone also said, can't believe I spent 2.5 hours just seeing a mother and a son just have a bunch of conversations about desert politics. The first movie, Dune, it was just like a setup just to give us like, background idea on what we're going to be dealing with, how Paul got to where he got to. I think on one end, people talking about all of these, oh my gosh, the actors, I do think that the directors and the casting directors were very clever and smart in casting who they casted. Because here's the thing, Dune is a very old story, a very old series, right? It is from literally the 1960s, and they want as many people to come watch it. Oh, how do we make this younger generation watch our movie that's like adapted from a book that's like so long ago? Oh, we cast the two most talked about celebrities that these young folks are literally obsessed over on TikTok and Twitter. Timothy and Zendaya. That's how you get the young folks to be invested in this movie. And it worked. People just showed up just to see Zendaya and Timothy in one film. It worked. Hey, it was a great marketing strategy in my opinion. And then you have Oscar Isaac. You hit the middle age mark where you now got like the 30 to 50-year-olds going to watch it. Then you have Timothy and Zendaya. You got the 20 to the teenage people watching it. Nice marketing strategy, I'm not gonna lie. And my friend, the one who inspired me to make this video, we were having a conversation like, oh, I'm kind of worried how, having these A-list celebrities, how much will they dilute the characters? Will they try to make it Marvel-esque, make it shallow, make it, water it down for the masses? We were worried about that, but they didn't. It was a great film. And as a book fan, my friend, she said it was really well done and she enjoyed it, which a lot of adaptations, they can't do that, especially when it's this huge. So yeah, we were a little worried about, oh, how are they gonna, will this casting affect how they portray the characters? It didn't. It was great. It was a good experience. And the music was great, the acting was great. But let's get into some of the criticism. Now that we've talked about the good things, let's get into the criticism. One of the biggest criticism that Dune have received is the orientalism. Another criticism that it has received is the representation. Where is it? What happened? Another one is, oh, I thought we were, showcasing Middle Eastern culture, a planet that is completely based off of the Middle East, North Africa. What happened? Why erase so much of the Middle Eastern, North African influence? Let's touch upon all of those. So as much as I love Herbert's message about how, settler colonialism and imperialism basically ruins and can ruin and have ruined, civilization and their lands and their, planets or whatever, I also have to critique his Orientalism. Herbert does have Orientalism. He does use, Middle Eastern, North African, and like a lot of the Islamic traditions and cultures as a plot device, as a plot tool. Because at the end, the Fremens aren't the most important part in terms of the characters or, the worlds or like the reader empathizing with them. They're more there to establish this overall, moral message. And, just borrowing people's culture to, for a plot device, it's not the best thing. It has been done so much, and I don't know if people have done it inspired from him, because I think what a lot of people is forgetting is Frank Herbert was one of the original ones who did it with not any ill intention. His intention was good because he wanted to show, he's from back in the day where like a bunch of messed up shit was like legal. But I think, the criticism is like an overall criticism of Hollywood and just like all of these media that we consume. But I also want to emphasize that I don't think Herbert had ill intentions. I'll say it again. I don't think Herbert had ill intentions when he did that, because he kind of gets a pass because he was, it was a very long time ago. The ones who do not get a pass are all of the ones that kept doing it even after people were like, no, stop, it's wrong, because Herbert didn't have anyone telling him, oh, it's wrong. Because again, freaking segregation was legal when he wrote this, right? He didn't have anyone telling him that it's wrong. It was no such thing. Okay, it was racist America back in the day, and that's why I think a lot of people kind of praise his message, because it's really rare, seeing a white man write an anti-imperialist, anti-settler colonial story. So yeah, I don't think Herbert had ill intention, but the ones who do have ill intentions are the ones from the 21st century who are like still running that little thing dry, where they're still like making the minority, the oppressed ones, freaking people of color, right? And I feel like if you are like a writer or filmmaker who are still making the helpless population, brown or black folks, then you're at wrong. And I understand people's frustration. They're tired of seeing it. However, we have to understand that this, story is from back in the day, and they're just adapting it. Which brings me to the point. I feel like John Spates and Denis, they both try to, be sensitive, and that resulted in the erasure of a lot of the, Middle Eastern, North African influence in the movie. As we can see, like it is not as very Middle Eastern, it's not very strictly Middle Eastern. They try to water it down and make it like a general, like, oh yeah, even though they do have like words that like are like older Arabic words. But I don't know if you noticed, but a lot of people did bring a point in the book. Herbert calls it a jihad, but in the trailer they called it a crusade. But the criticism was that they're doing it to, make it safe for Hollywood, because we know that Hollywood does not like the Middle East or the North Africa. They don't like anything related to, Islam, because, they don't want to include any direct and good influence of the Middle East, North Africa, unless, they're villainizing it. They'll only have Middle Eastern, North African influence if they can get to shit on it. Why would they have it in a good light? So that they make a good point, erasing a lot of the Islamic words and traditions and stories. And I do think they were trying to make it more Hollywood-y, so that the American folks can enjoy it without being uncomfortable. even though, Herbert did not want that. Herbert did not care. Jihad is not a bad thing. The only ones who really villainized it is America, right? It's almost like, and obviously the extremist groups of people that, called their act of atrocities as jihad. Jihad originally just means internal struggle. And another reason why I think Herbert did not have ill intention is because he did do his research. He did not, and back in the day, again, it's like pre 9/11, so a lot of the Islamophobic idea does not exist. It's more of like an orientalist idea on the Middle East, right? So instead of villainizing, it was more of fetishizing Middle East. Not any better, not any good either. Herbert's intention for, including jihad or calling, the say revolutions jihad was not intended to be something bad, because at the end of the day, who led the jihad? It was Paul. It didn't have any Islamophobic undertone like I feel like a lot of people have nowadays. For example, when the conversation of representation came along, when a lot of people, rightfully so, was questioning, hey man, what happened to the representation of, the Middle Eastern, North African actors? A lot of people were like, well, later on, these people turn into these religious extremist jihadists. You wouldn't want that. Why not? Why not? You think these people who were suppressed for literally decades, right? The Fremens, who were literally prosecuted, mistreated for decades, who have finally had enough, starts a jihad. Why do you think it's a bad thing? It looks like you might have some Islamophobic undertone there, buddy. But yeah, Hollywood does not like words like that have Islamic relation. So Spades and Denis played it safe, and they were like, hey, we're just gonna completely throw it out. Which, they had a moment to show the beauty of Middle Eastern North African culture. They had this opportunity to, showcase it in a nice and accurate way. Instead, they, were like cowards, and they were like, nah, we're just gonna move away from it. But they could have done it properly. How? They could have hired creatives behind the scenes, right, who are of the MENA background, right? And they could have helped them portrayed in a way that is not orientalist, that is not inaccurate, that is not disrespectful. And they just didn't do that because, it's still, Hollywood still does not like hiring a lot of, minorities behind the scenes. They don't care to be portraying things. It's too much work. Well, why do that when we could just completely erase that or just get away from it, right? And I do think that they had a good opportunity to, show and represent the Middle East and the Middle Eastern culture really well. And I feel like if they did hire a lot of the, behind the scenes creatives who would, I guess, guide them to portray it accurately, it would have translated onto the screen. So I do think that people are completely justified on, criticizing them for the lack of representation, for the lack of showcasing the amount of influence the MENA and Islam had on Iraqis. And, they just try to be politically safe, politically correct, which is unfortunate because the actors seem to know exactly what Iraqis and the spice is supposed to represent, and they even went to Abu Dhabi and Jordan to film it. So I think they know, but they just did not put it, they just try to play it safe, show like a general gist of it instead of keeping it very exclusive to MENA and the Islamic culture traditions. But like I was saying, I was watching a lot of interviews and, the actors, they were asked about, what they think the spice represents. And they were like, hey, man, in today's world, the spice is like oil. And I agree. I think you could pull a lot of allegories from Dune and apply it to today's world. The spice is definitely representing of the oil, right? We see how the Middle East, North Africa is completely obliterated by all of these powerful countries for oil. We see that on the U.S. soil, the corporations are paying the government to let them do whatever they want on treaty land that belongs to Native Americans. But they don't care. They only want oil. And they don't care that a lot of these people don't have clean water because of these oil spills. They don't care about that. They only care about money. And I feel like, you know, the story is a perfect allegory, and the fact that the actors got it, you know, this was before I watched the movie. I was like, oh, if the actors got that, that gives me hope. But yeah, it's just a little, you know, that's funny how you guys, and I do think people are valid to raise that question of representation and portrayal of you know, the Middle Eastern and North African countries accurately. But on the other hand, they also, you know, try to be really sensitive towards this specific portrayal of Baron Harkonnen. So in the books and in even earlier adaptations of the book, Baron is shown as, you know, there's like a homosexual person who preys on his younger nephews, which is obviously messed up. Why are you showing a homosexual in this bad light? What is the reason? And keep in mind that this was written way back in the day where, you know, homophobia was rampant and, you know, gay people were killed left and right. And back in the day, especially, the AIDS was a big stigma, and you know, some people still blame a lot of gay people for AIDS. And you know, especially at that time, it was just like a horrible time for AIDS. There was a whole crisis, right? And for him to just do this, it doesn't look good. There is an article that talks about it. It will be in my description as always, and I really appreciate it for the writers and, you know, the producer and the director to stray away from the narrative and not show that at all. Which is good. We don't want any more stigma. We don't want homophobia. Man, we don't fuck with homophobia. Homophobia is for the losers. However, I personally have a criticism about fatphobia. I mean, it's Hollywood again. You know, fatphobia in day-to-day life, it is very rampant. It's very normalized. Nobody really thinks twice about fatphobia. You know, people usually think you're overreacting. People think it's okay to villainize fat people. But, you know, again, we see Baron as this greedy person who's also obese and eats a lot. And, you know, this is not the first time, you know, in Harry Potter, the Dursleys, you know, these abusive, greedy people are also fat. We see it all. I can list so many, but I don't want this video to get any longer. But yeah, I do think there's like the sense of fat phobia. And I'm like, hey man, y'all try to be a little sensitive. Couldn't have fixed a little fat phobia, but you know, I get it, whatever. I don't get it, but what can I do? You know what I mean? Sorry for moving around my camera so much. Hopefully it doesn't bother you. My phone keeps messing up. So yeah, that was everything that I wanted to say about it. I think I have addressed what I wanted to address about Dune. Do I think that Dune is boring? No. Could it be a little confusing for people who are not familiar with the whole story? Yes, and I think that's what happened with a lot of people who were like, oh, this is boring. I also think that Denis did a really good job of making it very dramatic and not try to keep it to very like action-packed like sci-fi that we usually get, like Star Trek, Star Wars, or even like a lot of Marvel movies. And I think people went into the theaters with that kind of expectation, especially with the casting that they saw, and then they saw that, hey, this is way more calm and way more like dramatic and dark, dystopian sci-fi that is, I think it's great. The acting was great. It was directed beautifully. The visuals were amazing. It had a very like eerie vibe to it that was just perfect. Very fitting in my opinion. The soundtrack, it was amazing. I mean, I know that some people were saying like how the sound, the music or the woman's voice is not someone of the MENA background, which, you know, I could go into that, but let's not. I think we've done enough of that. Overall, it was great, and my friend who is a fan of the book said that they did it beautifully. And I agree. And like I said, I think they tried to, you know, target it more towards the book fans than anything. And, you know, all the people, the young people who did not read the book or was not familiar, went into it with a different expectation. They didn't get what they wanted. And that's why they're like, oh, it's boring, da-da-da-da-da. It's not. It's a great experience. I just wish they had subtitles, because at some part it was really low and hard to hear. But I'm going to be watching it again a few times with subtitles on my laptop. And again, all the criticisms are valid about representation and the portrayal. And yeah, that's all I have to say about the movie. I I can't wait for the second part. Apparently the second part, Chani, the character played by Zendaya, will be the main focus. Hopefully we'll see more of the Fremen and their struggle, and you know how much they're affected by these imperial powers. And hey man, I'll admit it, Timothy and Oscar looked fucking delicious in the film. My friends and I, look, we're all hijabis, but we were losing it kind of. We were like, oh my god, very delicious, very pleasing to the eyes. So hopefully that gives you some. Bro, why am I acting like I'm getting paid to promote Dune? I don't even need to do that. It's already huge. They've made fucking millions already. But yeah, I guess I just wanted to highlight some of the themes that I wanted people to talk about more so. Can't wait to watch more of our sister Zainab, aka Zendaya, and our brother Tosif, aka Timothy, in their little hijabs and desert, looking really cute. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video, and if you've made this far, again, thank you so much. If you like this video, please give it a like. If you're going to leave any comments and have discussions, feel free, but please be respectful. Please think twice before you post something. Thank you so much for watching again, and bye bye.